That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed parade ground. At 0500 hours, the air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the surrounding Carolina woods. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention in formation, her boots planted firmly on the packed earth, the weight of her utility uniform a familiar anchor. Beside her, Rex, her German Shepherd K9 partner, sat rigid, his black and tan coat gleaming under the floodlights. The dog's ears twitched at the distant hum of a Black Hawk warming up on the helipad, but he didn't move. Not a muscle. Eleanor's hand rested lightly on his harness, a silent signal of readiness. "Platoon, attention!" Captain Harlan's voice cracked like a rifle shot across the field. The company snapped to, heels clicking in unison, chins up, eyes forward. Harlan paced the front line, his polished boots leaving faint imprints in the dirt. A veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan, he embodied the chain of command, unyielding, precise. "Today we drill on perimeter security protocols. Vasquez, your team takes point on the mock breach simulation. Remember, detection first, engagement second. No deviations." Elena nodded sharply. "Yes, sir." Her voice was steady, honed by years of service. At 32, she was one of the few female handlers in the 82nd Airborne's K9 unit, her path forged through relentless quals and deployments where trust in a 4-legged partner meant the difference between life and routine. Rex had been hers since his puppy days at Lackland, their bond sealed in the quiet hours of night watches and scent tracking runs. He sensed her moods before she did, the subtle shift in her breathing when fatigue set in, the tension in her grip during high-stakes ops. Now, as the platoon broke into teams, Eleanor clipped Rex's lead and led him toward the mock village setup. A cluster of plywood structures mimicking an urban outpost, chain-link fences rigged with simulated IED markers. The routine was etched into her, like the dog tags around her neck. First, the walkthrough. Elena reviewed the op order with her squad, Privates Ramirez and Lee, both green but eager. "Rex sweeps the perimeter. We follow his alerts. If he signals, we mark and clear. No rushing the line." Ramirez, a wiry kid from Texas, grinned faintly. "He's got the nose, Sarge. We'll back him up." Lee nodded, adjusting his vest, the Velcro rasping softly. Elena appreciated their respect. It wasn't always given freely in a unit where handlers were sometimes seen as glorified pet sitters rather than tactical assets. As the whistle blew, the drill commenced. The air filled with radio chatter. "Alpha team in position. Tango en route." Rex moved ahead, his paws padding silently over the gravel path, nose low to the ground. Elena kept pace, her M4 slung across her chest, eyes scanning the tree line. The dog's tail was still, his focus absolute, a mirror of her own. They rounded the first structure, a faux command post, when Rex halted abruptly. His body stiffened, hackles rising just enough to signal without noise. Elena dropped to one knee, hand on his flank. "Alert," she murmured, marking the spot with a fluorescent flag. Buried beneath the simulated debris was a training explosive, its plastic casing dusted with scent compounds. "Good boy," she whispered, rewarding Rex with a quick pat and a treat from her pouch. He accepted it without breaking gaze, then resumed the sweep. The squad cleared the area methodically, Harlan observing from the observation tower, his silhouette etched against the rising sun. For a moment, everything aligned, the rhythm of boots on earth, the distant call of a morning bird, the quiet assurance of a job done right. But as they approached the final fence line, the disruption came, not from the drill, but from within. Lieutenant Graves, Harlan's second-in-command, stepped out from behind a supply crate, clipboard in hand. He was new to the unit, transferred from logistics after a desk-side promotion, his uniform starched, but his bearing loose. "Vasquez," he called, voice carrying over the wind. "Halt your dog. We're rerouting this sim. Intel brief says we prioritize the east flank. Your team's wasting time here." Eleanor paused, Rex sitting alert at her side. The op order was clear, full perimeter before reroute. "Sir, Rex has a hit on this sector. We need to confirm before—" "Confirm later," Graves interrupted, his tone clipped. "Orders from the captain. Move out, or I'll log it as insubordination." Ramirez and Lee exchanged glances, the air thickening with unspoken tension. Harlan watched from afar, arms crossed, but said nothing. Elena felt the weight of eyes on her, the platoon forming up behind. The hum of the chopper fading into silence. Rex whined softly, sensing her hesitation, his nose twitching toward the unmarked ground. She could comply. Fall in line, trust the chain to sort it later. But the hit was real. Rex didn't false alert, not after hundreds of runs. Ignoring it meant potential oversight in a real op, lives at stake. Her hand tightened on the lead. "With respect, sir, your protocol requires we clear the alert first. It's a 2-minute sweep." Graves' face hardened, stepping closer. "Sergeant, you're not in a position to question. Stand down." The moment stretched, the parade ground holding its breath. Elena met his gaze, then looked to Rex, whose steady eyes reflected unwavering trust. In that instant, the routine fractured, not with shouts or force, but with a choice. She unclipped the lead. "Rex, search!" The dog bolted forward, nose to the earth as Graves's protest echoed behind her. The platoon murmured, Harlan's radio crackling to life. What Eleanor didn't know yet was how this defiance would ripple outward, from a training field in North Carolina to a dusty town halfway around the world, where loyalty to a partner would redefine her duty. By 0700, as the sun crested fully, the drill was aborted. Harlan called a debrief in the readiness tent, the canvas flaps snapping in the breeze. Elena stood at ease, Rex at her heel, while Graves paced, recounting the breach to the gathered officers. "Discipline starts here," he said, jabbing a finger. "If we can't follow orders in training, how do we in the field?" Elena remained silent, her posture impeccable, but inside, the moral fault line widened. She'd seen ops where bending protocol saved lives, quiet acts buried in after-action reports. Rex leaned against her leg, a subtle press of warmth, as if urging her to hold the line. Harlan cleared his throat, eyes on his notes. "Vasquez, explain your action." "Sir, the alert was valid. Protocol bends to command," Graves cut in. Harlan raised a hand. "Enough. We'll review the logs. Dismissed." As the team filed out, Elena knelt to reattach Rex's lead, her fingers steady despite the knot in her chest. The dog's tail thumped once, a private affirmation. Outside, the base stirred to life, trucks rumbling toward the motor pool, the scent of Chow Hall coffee wafting on the air. But for Elena, the morning's defiance lingered, like the echo of boots on concrete. A first crack in the order she swore to uphold. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Word of the incident spread through the ranks by mess call, whispers of a handler who trusted her dog over a lieutenant. And when deployment orders came down 2 weeks later for a stabilization mission in a volatile border town, the stakes sharpened. There, amid sand-swept streets and uneasy alliances, Elena's conscience would face its true test, pulling her into a web of duty, deception, and a salvation that no parade could fully honor. The C-17 Globemaster's engines thrummed like a distant heartbeat as it descended into the haze-shrouded airfield outside Al-Karim, a dusty border town straddling Iraq and Syria. Sergeant Elena Vasquez gripped the webbing of her seat, the vibration traveling up her spine, while Rex lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, ears perked against the roar. The air inside the hold was thick with the scent of jet fuel and anticipation. Sweat-damp uniforms, the metallic tang of gear crates lashed down. 2 weeks had passed since the training incident at Fort Bragg, a shadow that followed Elena through briefings and quals, but the chain of command had held, a formal note in her file, no further action. Lieutenant Graves's transfer to another unit was mentioned in passing, chalked up to rotations. Still, the whispers lingered in the chow line, a quiet respect from some, wariness from others. "Feet down, helmets on," the loadmaster barked over the intercom. The ramp whined open, admitting a blast of hot, sand-laced wind that stung like fine grit. Elena shouldered her ruck, clipped Rex's lead, and led him down the tarmac. The sun beat mercilessly at 1400 hours, turning the world into a shimmering mirage. Fort Bragg's pine-scented order felt worlds away. Here the base was a makeshift sprawl of tents and HESCO barriers, ringed by razor wire and watchtowers. Captain Harlan waited near a Humvee, his face shadowed under a boonie hat, clipboard in hand. "Vasquez, good flight. Your team's billeted in Sector 3. Debrief at 1600. "Yes, sir," she replied, saluting crisply. Rex sat beside her, scanning the unfamiliar terrain. Low-slung adobe buildings in the distance, the faint bleat of goats from the town proper. Harlan's eyes flicked to the dog, a nod of acknowledgement. "Rex looks sharp. We'll need that nose for route clearance. Locals report suspicious activity near the market. Possible smuggling ring tied to insurgents." Eleanor absorbed the intel, her mind already mapping patrols. The 82nd's mission was stabilization, secure the border crossing, support local forces, prevent spillover from the chaos beyond. Al-Karim was a fragile hub, its people caught between militias and the promise of reconstruction aid. Handlers like her were key, K9s for detecting explosives, drugs, even hidden weapons caches that human eyes missed. As she and her squad, Ramirez and Lee, now seasoned by the flight's monotony, moved to their tent, the routine reasserted itself. Unpack gear, check harnesses, run a quick obedience drill with Rex under the relentless sky. By evening, the debrief tent hummed with fluorescent lights and the low murmur of voices. Maps pinned to easels showed the town's grid, narrow alleys snaking from the central souk to the riverbed wadi. Harlan stood at the pointer, his voice measured. "Primary objective, joint patrols with Iraqi security. Vasquez, your unit integrates with Alpha Company for market sweeps starting tomorrow. Intel suggests IEDs, or worse, stay on protocol. No solo deviations." His gaze lingered on her, a subtle reminder of Bragg. Elena nodded, jotting notes. "Understood, sir. Rex is calibrated for C4 and Semtex variants." Lieutenant Nowak, Harlan's new XO, a solid, no-nonsense officer from the previous rotation, added, "Civilians are skittish. We've got a liaison, Major Tariq from the local brigade. Coordinate through him." The meeting wrapped with assignments. Ramirez on overwatch, Lee handling comms. Outside, the night cooled slightly, stars piercing the velvet sky, the distant call to prayer echoing from minarets. Elena walked Rex along the perimeter, his paws silent on the gravel, nose working the air. The dog's presence grounded her, the steady rhythm of their steps, the way he pressed close when a shadow moved too quickly. Back in the tent, she reviewed his logs by headlamp, the beam catching the glint of his tags. Dawn broke with the grind of engines. At 0600, Elena's team rolled out in a convoy of MRAPs, dust plumes trailing like veils. The town unfolded in layers, mud brick homes with laundry flapping on lines, children peering from doorways, vendors setting up stalls under colorful awnings. Rex rode in the open back, head out, alert to every scent. They linked with Major Tariq at the market edge. a wiry man in crisp fatigues, his mustache twitching as he greeted Harlan. "Welcome, Captain. The people appreciate your presence, but trust is earned. Patrol carefully." The joint sweep began methodically. Elena and Rex took point, weaving through the crowd. The air buzzed with life, spices sharp in the nostrils, the sizzle of kebabs on grills, barters in rapid Arabic. Rex moved with purpose, pausing at crates of fruit, sniffing crates of rugs. No alerts. Ramirez covered high ground from a rooftop, his scope sweeping. "Clear so far, Sarge," he radioed, voice crackling over static. Halfway through, near a cluster of textile stalls, tension rippled. A group of elders gathered, their faces lined with suspicion, murmuring to Tariq. One, an older woman in a black abaya, pointed toward a side alley. "Something hidden," she said through the Major's translation. "Strangers at night." Harlan signaled Elena forward. "Check it." Rex led the way into the shadowed passage, the walls closing in with the scent of damp earth and refuse. Elena's hand hovered near her sidearm, boots scraping softly. The dog stiffened at a pile of discarded pallets, whining low. "Alert," she called quietly, marking the spot. The squad cleared civilians back as engineers probed. Underneath, a buried cache. Fertilizer components, wiring, enough for a roadside bomb. "Good work," Harlan said later, clapping her shoulder in the after-action huddle. But as they loaded up, Elena caught a sidelong glance from Tariq, his expression unreadable. Whispers followed from the locals, gratitude mixed with wariness. Rex panted at her side, tongue lolling, oblivious to the undercurrents. That night, back at base, the moral test deepened. During chow, Ramirez relayed scuttlebutt from a local contact. Rumors of a corrupt element in Tariq's brigade, turning a blind eye to smuggling for payoffs. "Could be why that cache was there, Sarge. If we push too hard, it might blow back." Elena forked her MRE, the plastic crinkling, Rex dozing nearby. Duty demanded she report suspicions up the chain, protocol for potential insider threats. But compassion tugged. Al-Karim's people were vulnerable, their fragile peace hinging on alliances. Accusing without proof could fracture the joint ops, isolate the unit. She weighed it in the quiet hours, the tense canvas whispering in the wind, Rex's breathing a steady anchor. Harlan's door flap glowed with lamplight. A quick knock could start the wheels turning. Or she could observe. Let the patrols build evidence. The choice echoed the defiance at Bragg, trusting instinct over immediate order. As stars wheeled overhead, Elena scratched Rex's ears, his eyes meeting hers in silent accord. The town's fate, and hers, hung in that balance, a ripple yet to crest into the salvation that would one day draw her back unseen among the crowds. The days blurred into a rhythm of dust and vigilance in Al-Karim, the sun rising like a brass medal over the jagged horizon. Sergeant Elena Vasquez rose at 0400, the tense interior still cloaked in shadow, Rex stirring at the first rustle of her cot. She ran a grooming brush over his coat, the bristles whispering against fur, still carrying the faint grit of yesterday's patrol. His eyes, dark and knowing, followed her every move, a bond forged not in words, but in the shared weight of harnesses and the quiet after-alerts. Outside, the base hummed to life, generators coughing awake, the metallic clank of mess kits being stacked, the distant bark of another handler's dog echoing her own morning routine. By 0600, the convoy assembled in the motor pool, MRAPs idling with a low growl that vibrated through the treads. Elena checked Rex's vest, securing the panels with Velcro snaps, then loaded him into the vehicle. Ramirez slid into the driver's seat, his hands steady on the wheel, while Lee monitored the radio, static hissing like a held breath. Captain Harlan briefed them en route, his voice cutting through the engine noise over the intercom. "Market sweep again today, but intel's hot. Possible handoff in the souk. Tariq's team embeds with us. Vasquez, Your K9 leads on secondary scans, alleys and backlots. No assumptions." "Affirmative, sir," Elena replied, her tone clipped, professional. The rumors from Chow had festered overnight. She'd logged a preliminary note in the unit journal, flagging the whispers of corruption without naming sources. Harlan had acknowledged it with a nod during evening rounds, promising to loop in command. But the chain moved slowly in theater. Verifications first, accusations last. As the gates swung open, the town swallowed them, streets awakening with the creak of shutters, the sharp tang of cardamom from early tea vendors, children kicking a deflated ball against adobe walls. They linked with Major Tariq at the market's fringe, his Humvee parked amid a scatter of market carts. The Major's salute was crisp, but his eyes darted to the growing crowd. Vendors unfurling bolts of fabric, the low murmur of haggling rising like steam. "Captain, the elders request a word after the sweep," he said, his English measured. "They speak of gratitude for the cash find, but also concerns." Harlan nodded, signaling the start. Eleanor and Rex took the left flank, weaving through the throng. The dog's nose worked methodically, pausing at burlap sacks of dates, the sweet rot mingling with diesel exhaust from idling trucks. Midway, near a shadowed arcade of repair shops, Rex tensed. His body went rigid, a low rumble building in his throat. Not a bark, but a vibration Eleanor felt through the lead. "Alert," she radioed softly, kneeling to let him pinpoint. The spot was a rusted oil drum half buried in sand, innocuous amid scrap metal. Engineers moved in, probes clicking against the surface, while civilians were herded back by Tariq's men. Harlan watched from the overwatch position, his silhouette steady against the glare. As the drum was pried open, the find chilled the air, not just components, but marked U.S. aid crates, medical supplies rerouted, their seals tampered, destined for black market flip to insurgents. Ramirez whistled low over comms. "Sarge, that's our stuff. Smells like inside job." Elena's pulse steadied. Protocol demanded she secure the site, but the implications burned. Tariq approached, his face paling under the sun. "This mistake, smugglers, not us." Harlan's voice crackled. "Hold position. Vasquez, mark and photo. We'll debrief with command." But as Elena directed the documentation, flash of camera, scribble of inventory, Tariq pulled her aside, his voice a urgent whisper behind a stall. "Sergeant, listen. The corruption. It's not my brigade. A few take bribes to look away. Report this and the town suffers. No patrols, no aid. The people." He gestured to a nearby family. The mother's abaya clutched around a toddler, eyes wide with the day's chaos. Elena's hand rested on Rex's head, the dog's warmth a counter to the knot in her gut. Duty screamed report, chain of command, integrity of the mission. The cash proved the threat. Smuggled aid, fueling violence, endangering everyone, including her squad. But compassion clawed back. Al-Karim teetered on alliances. Shattering trust could isolate the locals, invite reprisals. She'd seen it before, ops unraveling from fractured partnerships, leaving villages exposed. Rex whined softly, sensing the stall, his nose twitching toward Tariq as if scenting the lie beneath the plea. The squad regrouped at the vehicles, the drums secured in a tow sling. Harlan clapped Elena's shoulder. "Solid work. This ties to your note. Good call, logging it." But as they mounted up, a crowd gathered at the market's edge. Elders, vendors, even the woman from the first patrol. They murmured in Arabic, Tariq translating haltingly. "They thank you, the dog. He sees what we cannot." One elder, grizzled and leaning on a cane, extended a rough hand to Elena, then to Rex, who accepted the touch without flinching. The gesture hung in the air, a fragile bridge amid the tension. Back at base by 1100, the reckoning ignited. In the command tent, fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, maps fluttering in the AC draft. Harlan faced Tariq across the folding table, Lieutenant Nowak logging every word. "Major, explain the crates. Our aid, your routes. Coincidence?" Tariq's posture held, but sweat beaded on his brow. "Isolated actors, Captain. I will investigate internally." Elena stood at parade rest, Rex sitting alert beside her, the dog's presence a silent witness. She could stay silent, let the officers navigate. Protocol favored escalation through channels, but the moral fracture deepened when Nowak pulled up sat imagery, routes mirroring the rumors, timestamps aligning with Tariq's patrols. "Sergeant Vasquez," Harlan said, turning to her. "Your input?" The tent fell quiet, the weight of eyes pressing like the desert heat. Ramirez and Lee waited outside, their radios silent. Elena met Harlan's gaze, then Tariq's. "Sir," Rex alerted clean, "the diversion of aid endangers the mission and the town. We report up. Full inquiry. But—" She paused, choosing words with care. "We coordinate with the Major's team to isolate the bad actors quietly. Protect the Alliance." Tariq exhaled, a flicker of relief crossing his features. Harlan nodded slowly. "Agreed. We'll brief JAG by 1400. Vasquez, your discretion noted." As the meeting broke, Elena led Rex out into the glare, the gravel crunching underfoot. The dog's tail flicked once, a subtle approval. Word spread through the base by afternoon, handlers in the kennel runs, MPs at the gates, whispers of the handler who balanced chain and conscience, pushing for justice without collapse. Yet the test wasn't over. That evening, as the call to prayer wove through the wire, a runner from the town arrived, an envelope for Elena, sealed with wax from the elders. Inside, a simple note in halting English. "Your loyalty saves us. Watch, but act true." Rex nosed her hand, the tense shadows lengthening. The defiance from Bragg had evolved here, rippling into a public stand, not with fanfare, but with the quiet force of a report filed, an alliance mended. In the days ahead, it would culminate in a sweep that exposed the ring, her actions etching her into the town's fragile memory, a savior who sought no parade, only the steady path of duty redeemed. The acrid scent of diesel lingered in the command tent long after the runner departed, the envelope's wax seal now a faint imprint on Elena's palm. Sergeant Elena Vasquez folded the note carefully, tucking it into her breast pocket beside her dog tags, the paper crinkling like a whispered promise. Rex shifted at her feet, his nose nudging her boot, eyes reflecting the dim glow of the headlamp. Outside, the base settled into evening watch, patrols tracing the wire under floodlights, the low thrum of generators masking the night's subtle threats. Al-Karim's skyline pierced the horizon, minarets silhouetted against a fading crimson sky, a reminder that the town's fragile peace demanded more than alerts and reports. By 0500 the next morning, the air cooled to a deceptive calm, dew forming on the tent flaps as Elena prepped for the op. She checked Rex's harness under the portable light, the Velcro rasping softly, his coat brushed free of yesterday's dust. The dog's focus was absolute, tail still as she ran through commands in low tones. "Sit, stay, search." He responded without hesitation, a seamless extension of her will. Ramirez and Lee stirred in their cots, the rustle of sleeping bags punctuating the quiet. "Big day, Sarge," Ramirez asked, zipping his vest, his voice carrying the edge of anticipation, honed from the previous finds. "Every day's big," Elena replied evenly, clipping the lead. The squad's trust in her had solidified since the drum cache, subtle nods in the chow line, Ramirez sharing a ration bar with Rex during downtime, but the weight of the note pressed on her. Act true. Harlan's briefing at 600 confirmed the escalation. In the ops center, maps glowed under tactical lights, pins marking suspected routes from the SAT imagery. Joint raid on a warehouse district, northwest edge, Harlan stated, his pointer tracing the grid. Intel from Tariq's internals points to a handoff tonight, smugglers fencing the diverted aid. Vasquez, your team embeds with his quick reaction force. K9 primary for entry clears. Major, your men handle perimeter. Tariq stood rigid, his uniform pressed despite the heat, eyes meeting Elena's with a nod of guarded alliance. We move as one, Captain. My brigade routes out its own. The plan was procedural. MRAPs to the rally point, dismount for foot approach. Rex sweeping ahead. No deviations. Harlan's emphasis on chain integration, a subtle check on Elena's logged suspicions. As the convoy rolled out at 0700, dust devils swirling in their wake, the town stirred around them. Market vendors shuttering early, the bleat of livestock echoing from side streets. Elena rode in the lead vehicle, Rex's head out the window, nostrils flaring at the passing sense of baked earth and olive groves. They staged 2 clicks from the target, a cluster of low-slung warehouses ringed by chain link and scrub brush, the Euphrates' muddy gleam visible beyond. Tariq's men fanned out, rifles at low ready, their boots silent on the parched ground. Harlan signaled the advance over encrypted comms. Alpha in position. Vasquez, you're up. Elena unclipped Rex, the lead trailing as he moved forward, paws padding over cracked concrete. The air hung heavy with the tang of rust and stagnant water, shadows lengthening under the midday sun. Ramirez covered left, Lee right, their breaths measured through the earpieces. Rex hit the first alert at the perimeter fence, body stiffening near a loose panel, a low whine escaping. Elena marked it with a chem light, engineers probing for tripwires while the joint team breached quietly. Inside the compound, the warehouse loomed, corrugated metal doors ajar, the faint hum of a generator inside. Tariq whispered translations to his squad as they stacked up, the group's rhythm sinking despite the cultural divide, universal tension in the grip of weapons, the subtle shift of weight before entry. Clear the threshold, Harlan ordered. Eleanor loosed Rex fully, the dog darting low through the gap, nose to the floor. The interior unfolded in dim layers, stacked crates under bare bulbs, the sharp odor of chemicals cutting the stale air. Rex circled methodically, pausing at a false wall of plywood, hackles rising. Hit, Elena called softly, her voice steady over the radio. The team pried it open, flashlights cutting beams through dust motes, shelves lined with pilfered aid, antibiotics, bandages, even field rations, mingled with insurgent-grade detonators. But deeper, voices echoed from an adjoining room, muffled Arabic, the clink of metal. Tariq signaled his men forward, Elena and Rex flanking. The confrontation erupted without warning. A scuffle as Tariq's team subdued 2 figures in civilian garb, their hands raised in surrender, faces pale under keffiyehs. One was a low-level smuggler, the other a sergeant from Tariq's own brigade, his uniform stashed in a corner. Traitor! Tariq spat, securing cuffs, his composure cracking for the first time. Harlan's radio crackled to higher command. Cash secured, insider confirmed, request extraction. Elena knelt by Rex, rewarding him with a pat, the dogs panting a counterpoint to the rising chaos outside. Word of the raid spread like sand through the town by afternoon, locals gathering at the market as the convoy returned, whispers turning to open murmurs. Elders approached the gates, Tariq at their side, his report to Harlan laced with contrition. The rot is excised, your handler's dog. He uncovered what honor demanded. But the public reckoning came swiftly. By 1600, a joint presser unfolded in the base's briefing area, reporters from embedded media units scribbling notes under the AC hum. Harlan stood at the podium, Elena and Rex to his flank, the dog's presence drawing quiet awe. This operation disrupts a smuggling network, threatening stabilization efforts, Harlan stated, his tone measured. Sergeant Vasquez's K9 unit was instrumental, upholding protocols while exposing internal threats. Questions followed, from a wire service hack on alliance strains, from a local stringer on civilian safety. Eleanor fielded one directly, her posture straight, voice clear. Our mission protects the town. Loyalty to partners, to duty, guides every step. Rex sat unmoving, a symbol of that trust as cameras flashed. Tariq echoed her, pledging reforms, internal audits, joint training to rebuild faith. The coverage rippled outward, clips airing on military networks, framing the bust as a model of integrated ops. Elena's role highlighted without fanfare. Back in the tent that evening, the weight lifted incrementally. Harlan pulled her aside during rounds, the lantern casting long shadows. Your calls balance the line, Vasquez. Commands noting it for your file. Positive. She nodded, scratching Rex's ears, the dog's warmth easing the day's residue. Ramirez and Lee shared a meal outside, the scent of reheated MREs mingling with night-blooming jasmine from beyond the wire. The town's gratitude arrived via courier, a woven mat for the kennel, inscribed with thanks in Arabic script. Elena hung it silently, the fibers rough under her fingers. Yet consequences lingered in the quiet. Tariq's brigade faced a full review, aid flows rerouted under stricter oversight. The alliance tested but intact. Elena's defiance, from Bragg's field to this warehouse, had sparked quiet reform. Enhanced K9 protocols in joint exercises, mentorship slots for handlers like her. As the stars emerged, Rex curled at her side, his breathing a steady rhythm. The moral choice had rippled, etching integrity into the system, but the true legacy waited in the days ahead. A homecoming where honor was honored not in spotlight, but in the shadows of a crowd, a silent smile amid the parade's echo. The months following the warehouse raid in Al-Karim blurred into a cascade of after-action reviews and rotations, the desert's grit yielding to the structured cadence of redeployment. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood on the tarmac at Fort Bragg, the C-17's ramp yawning open under a slate-gray Carolina sky, Rex at her heel with his paws planted firm on the concrete. The air carried the familiar bite of pine and aviation fuel, a far cry from the sand-choked winds of the border town. Her ruck hung heavy on one shoulder, the weight of deployment logs and commendation drafts tucked inside, but her posture remained unyielding, boots aligned, gaze forward as the squad disembarked in orderly file. Captain Harlan approached, his salute crisp amid the whine of taxiing engines. Vasquez, solid tour. Brass reviewed the op. Your inputs on the joint protocols are feeding into doctrine updates. His voice held the measured tone of command, eyes flicking to Rex with a nod of respect. The dogs earned his stripes too. Debrief at 1400. Then liberty. Elena returned the salute, her hand steady. Thank you, sir. Ramirez and Lee lingered nearby, unloading gear crates with the quiet efficiency of men who'd shared foxholes and alerts. Couldn't have cleared those caches without you two, she added, her words brief, the bond unspoken in their shared glances. The base routine reasserted itself like an old harness. Kennel checks at dawn, where Eleanor ran Rex through obedience drills on the dew-slick fields, his responses sharp as a bayonet. The incident at Bragg's training ground felt distant now, a precursor to the deeper tests overseas, but its echo lingered in her file, a note on discretion that had evolved into praise for balanced judgment. Whispers from the warehouse bust had reached higher echelons, prompting quiet reforms, mandatory cross-training for K9 handlers with allied forces, enhanced vetting for aid distribution chains. Elena's name surfaced in memos, not as a hero, but as a case study in moral navigation, duty tempered by conscience, loyalty extending beyond the leash. Word from Al-Karim arrived sporadically, routed through official channels, a liaison report detailing the brigade's purge of corrupt elements, aid flows stabilized under new oversight. Major Tariq's follow-up email, cleared for release, spoke of the town's resilience, the market bustling again, elders crediting the silent guardian and her dog for exposing the shadows. No fanfare, just procedural gratitude. A photo of the woven mat, now displayed in the local council hall, Rex's image sketched beside it in simple lines. Eleanor pinned the print to her locker, the paper's edges curling slightly in the humid air, a private talisman amid the clang of metal lockers and the distant bark of training runs. Homecoming unfolded in the off-duty hours, the base's rhythm giving way to civilian edges. Eleanor drove to her off-post apartment in Fayetteville, Rex riding shotgun with his head out the window, ears flapping in the breeze. The radio hummed with static-laced news of Middle East stabilizations, her story buried in the broader narrative, but the quiet satisfaction settled in her chest like the weight of a well-fitted vest. She walked him along the Cape Fear River at dusk, the water's murmur blending with his steady gait, the leash a loose loop between them. No parades awaited, her service was the kind that rippled without spotlight, integrity etched in reports rather than ribbons. Yet Al-Karim's legacy crossed oceans in unexpected ways. 6 months post-rotation, an invitation arrived via encrypted military post. A formal letter from the town's provisional council inviting her to a reconstruction ceremony. "Your actions preserved our home," it read in careful English signed by the elders. Travel cleared through command as a goodwill gesture. Elena boarded a commercial flight to Baghdad, then a dusty convoy to the border. Rex stayed at the kennel, his farewell whine echoing in her ears as she boarded, but the bond held, trust in absence, as vital as in the field. The town had transformed under the sun-bleached sky, the market's awnings brighter, new concrete barriers lining the souk, children playing without the shadow of hidden threats. The parade assembled at midday, a modest affair. Local security in formation, banners fluttering in the hot wind, the air thick with the scent of grilled lamb and fresh-baked flatbread. Major Tariq, promoted and steadied, stood at the podium, his uniform crisp as he addressed the crowd. Villagers in colourful robes, embedded reporters jotting notes, a brass band piping simple marches. "Today, we honour the alliance that safeguarded Al-Karim," he said, his voice carrying over the assembly, "a soldier from afar whose loyalty uncovered deception and restored trust." Elena's name was spoken then, met with murmurs of recognition. The woman from the patrols, the handler whose dog had scented truth, but she wasn't at the front. Protocol and preference kept her in the crowd. Blending with the locals under a wide-brimmed hat, her civilian clothes unremarkable amid the throng. She watched as a plaque was unveiled, a stone marker at the market's edge, inscribed with thanks to the K9 unit, Rex's silhouette etched beside her initials. The elders clapped, children waving flags, the rhythm of boots on packed earth echoing the drills she'd known. Tariq scanned the faces, spotting her perhaps, but she offered only a subtle nod, her smile quiet, contained. The ceremony wrapped with handshakes and shared tea in the council tent, the canvas flaps stirring in the breeze. Elena accepted a cup, the steam rising like morning mist, listening as villagers recounted the raid's aftermath, safer routes, rebuilt clinics stocked with untainted aid. "You chose right," one elder said, his grip firm on her hand, eyes lined with the weight of gratitude. She nodded, words spare. "Duty demands it." No speeches, no medals pinned under flashing lights, just the procedural close of a chapter, her presence a bridge mended by action. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows over the wadi, Elena slipped away, the convoy waiting at the edge of town. The drive back blurred into the horizon, the parade's echoes fading like radio static. In the quiet of the Humvee, she touched the pocket where the invitation rested, the paper worn soft. Her defiance, from a training field to a warehouse shadow, had reformed not just protocols, but lives, the system's rigid lines bending toward justice without breaking. Back at Bragg weeks later, the routine resumed. Dawn drills with Rex, his nose keen as ever, their steps synced on the parade ground. Harlan mentioned a mentorship slot in her future, training new handlers on integrated ops. The legacy settled like dew on boots, unseen but enduring. In the end, honor wasn't claimed in crowds, but carried in silence, a handler's quiet smile amid the ranks. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the town she saved, invited her to a parade. She watched from the crowd, smiling silently. See you in the next one. In the echo of boots on earth, loyalty endures as the truest command.